What's up, ladies and gentlemen, Bengals fans everywhere? I am Anthony Cosenza, and this is the Orange and Black Insiders Water Cooler Chat on Mondays. We bring it to you, get you caught up with all the headlines going with the Cincinnati Bengals, the AFC North, and the rest of the NFL. There's a lot of stuff happening with the Bengals, but really, obviously, this week is all about the Super Bowl coming up here between the Buccaneers and the Chiefs. So that's where a lot of the news is coming from. But some Bengals-related news coming from some of those interviews. We'll get you that. We're going to talk about a lot today. So buckle in. Again, I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider. Little shameless self-promotion. If you wouldn't mind, please go check out the interview we did last week with Bengals quarterback Ken Anderson. He spent like 40 minutes with us. It was incredible and a great time. A lot of stories, reliving his career and, talking about a number of different things. But most importantly, go support the Ken Anderson Alliance. KenAndersonAlliance.org is the website. Please go financially support if you are able. That great organization. We want to promote what they're doing there and, helping adults with developmental disabilities and doing all kinds of really, really cool stuff. So if you have the means, please go support that charity. We appreciate that. Seeing a lot of hellos from people. Hi, Roy from Tennessee, it looks like. And Apple Juice. Hi, Apple Juice. I'm doing well. How are you? Russ saying he always looks forward to the water cooler chat. Awesome. Glad to have you all with us. We try and keep this around the same time if we're able to on Mondays, usually early afternoon Eastern if we're able. Just unfortunately some stuff kind of came up, so we're recording live a little later than usual, so I apologize about that for a little bit of a time difference. But happy to have all of you with us. Let's get to it. I'm going to share, as I usually do, a number of different pieces of headlines and news and all that good stuff. So let's get it going here. Let's start with where should we start, guys? Let's start here. This is an article from my partner in crime on CincyJungle.com. The Joe Burrow re-endorsing the Bengals drafting LSU wide receiver JaMarr Chase. So there was an interview that Joe Burrow gave with Fanatics. It was like a Q&A thing where a lot of fans were able to pop in. Basically, Joe Burrow said, I'd love to play with JaMarr. He's a great player. We're still in contact all the time. We talk every now and then. He's a great dude and a great player. I'd love to have him on the team. Obviously, JaMarr Chase is one of the guys the Bengals are that I would think that the Bengals are targeting at number 5, depending on what they do in free agency, whether that's offensive line or maybe they get a wide receiver in free agency. So it may remove the need here. But 4 openings on the wide receiver depth chart potentially: Alex Erickson, AJ Green, John Ross, and I'm missing somebody. Mike Thomas is the 4th one. I always get 3, and then I go with the 4th, and I forget the 4th one. But those are the 4 that are set to be free agents this year. So, and our good buddy Zim with the tweet there, you can go check that out. But there is a video, him talking about JaMarr Chase joining the Cincinnati Bengals. We, John Sheeran and I on our weekly show, we did a little bit of a JaMarr Chase versus Devontae Smith at number 5. That was a fun debate, so go check that one out. But at any rate, obviously Joe Burrow's on board with that. I assume Joe Burrow will also be on board potentially with offensive line help too. So a lot of choices for the Cincinnati Bengals at number 5, maybe even a move back. Kyle Pitts is a guy maybe they'd be interested in if you move back a few spots. We'll see. But offensive line, wide receiver are definite needs for the Bengals. Let's keep it going here. We've got an interesting article courtesy of Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic. If you do not subscribe to The Athletic, it is a paid website, so please do so. This one came out just a little bit ago, so it's actually pretty good that I took the air a little later than usual. Shaq Barrett was all for getting signed by the Bengals, and here's why he didn't. So if you may or may not remember this, but back in the free agency period for the Bengals under Zach Taylor in his first offseason, they really pursued Barrett and had I believe a 2-year deal on the table for him, and it was going to be a good a good deal for both sides. Barrett was pretty excited. The Bengals apparently pulled the deal at the last minute, citing a shoulder injury. And what happened then, Barrett went to Tampa Bay on a 1-year deal and then was franchise tagged this year. And he has been explosive for them, getting after the quarterback regularly, whereas the Bengals have had massive, massive struggles since getting to the quarterback. So Paul Dehner chatted with him during the media week here, and it said, and here's what Barrett said about how that whole thing played out. Quote, "They said I had something with my shoulder or something that I don't have anything with my shoulder. That's when they pulled off, which had me pretty upset because I was putting all my eggs into that basket. I thought Cincinnati would have been the right move for me. They offered me a 2-year contract, and my agent was sure he could get me up a little bit more than what they offered. So it would have been the most money I'd ever made with the most security. And that's all I wanted was security and stability for my family. It was a gut shot once they pulled the contract offer, but I didn't hear from anybody else about anything from the teams I visited about my shoulder injury because I never had a shoulder injury." Barrett signed a 1-year, $4 million with the Bucs. And then, as I mentioned, he was franchise tagged this year. He's been just absolutely explosive. You see here, 19 and a half sacks in 2019 and led fourth among all edge rushers and pressures. And he had 8 sacks this year. So 27 and a half sacks the past 2 seasons where he theoretically could have been with the Cincinnati Bengals. So the Bengals said he had a shoulder issue. He said he did not. So he's not really sure where that is coming from, or that did come from with the Bengals. And I guess I got 2 things to say, or 2 questions about that. Number one, how do you flag a shoulder injury that no other teams that he visited flagged? I don't understand that. I know medical teams do different evaluations, different experts find different things, but you got to kind of shake your head at that one a little bit. And then, of course, there's some talk maybe that, and I think Paul Dehner Jr. actually in one of his, off-season plan, off-season blueprint type of thing for the Bengals, he mentioned they could go after Shaq Barrett again. Based on some of these comments, I don't know that Barrett would be kind of open to returning to Cincinnati, even if there was a lot of money on the table. Who knows? But when he uses terms like gut shot, it made me upset, that sort of thing, that doesn't sound too promising for a potential, I guess you wouldn't call it a reunion, technically, because they never really were united. But, him coming back to Cincinnati, I don't know how plausible that is based on some of these terms he used. So pretty upsetting. It's good to see him playing well, since landing with Tampa Bay. And now he's in a Super Bowl, whereas the Bengals are, have been one of the worst teams in the league over the past 2 seasons. So, kudos to Barrett for making himself a lot of money and being a productive player. And, the Bengals kind of have a little bit of egg on their face after this one. So anyway, very interesting stuff from Paul Dehner Jr. of The Athletic. So go check out the entire article there and support what they're doing over there. Good stuff from him as always. Let's keep it going. We've got, this is from our buddy James Rapine over at All Bengals, the Sports Illustrated site. I'm going to pull this up here. There are a handful of players that impressed or could be on the radar for the Cincinnati Bengals from the Senior Bowl. That, as you know, came and went this past weekend, and there's a lot of buzz about some of these players. And unfortunately, it wasn't the same with the COVID stuff going on in terms of, direct access to some of these players, or, and Zach Taylor was actually one of the few head coaches who actually went and attended the event. So he was there in person. So you can see some of these names here, and maybe the first time that you're hearing some of these names, but probably want to maybe start getting familiar with some of these guys. Quincy Roche, the edge out of Miami, should be a early day 3 pick, but you see here the notes, 30 and a half sacks and 45 career games. I think a lot of people, at least who have been paying attention somewhat closely to the draft, are familiar with Dwayne Eskridge, the wide receiver out of Western Michigan. He's a good player and could fill a need here. You can see some of this from Russ Heltman, 358 yards against man coverage. 18.8 yards per target. So, good fit there. Deontay Smith, a tackle out of East Carolina, big guy, 6'5", 294. So he can do a little bit of tackle and guard. Of course, Creed Humphrey, the interior offensive lineman out of Oklahoma. He had a very nice week at the Senior Bowl and just continues to be a guy that will probably be there in round 2. He might move up. You see it could be a top 35 pick. I don't know that he's going to go first round, but he could be one of those first names off the board the second night there for round 2. So keep that in mind. This is another guy right here, Quinn Miners, a guy out of Wisconsin Whitewater, small school. He really was the biggest riser this week, I guess, because of where he went to school. But a guy for sure for Bengals fans to keep tabs on. Seems to be a guy that would fit the Frank Pollock mold in terms of what he wants. And, he's basically a guy that made himself a lot of money this week. So, he's a guy that could be there maybe as early as day 2, maybe, round 4 if he's still there. But there's a couple of guys like this. I think Ben Barch was one last year, came from a smaller school and ended up going in round 4. And so Quinn Miners is another guy that has been rising up boards. So these are just a few of the names. Go check out. And then, of course, Carlos Basham out of Wake Forest, the edge there. He is a guy that just continues to impress a lot of people. So go check out that article on All Bengals. There are a number of names there. Good stuff from James Rapine and his crew over there, working hard and putting out content furiously as they always do. So good stuff from them. Seeing if there's anything else here. There's one thing as we kind of transition a little bit into. We're going to talk a little more Bengals stuff, and then we're going to talk about AFC North, and then we're going to talk about the rest of the NFL. But it sounds like Press Taylor, who lost his job or was not retained with the Philadelphia Eagles, will not be joining the Bengals because Press Taylor is now with the Colts. There was some speculation that he could be joining Zach Taylor in some capacity, maybe passing game coordinator. The Rams had that position under McVay, and they just added run game coordinator to Frank Pollock's title. So, maybe that was something that was thought about, but they're not reuniting as brother. And so he is now joining the Colts, but he wasn't retained by the Philadelphia Eagles. So that's something that we can, I don't know, maybe some of you felt that it was something that should have been explored. Maybe some of you thought that it shouldn't have been explored, but who knows? Regardless, he's not in the cards for the Bengals. I want to do another little promotion of a friend of ours. He's been on our show before. He's got his own show where it's a lot of fun. I think it's usually on Tuesday nights. It's his last one of the season, so I guess he's taking a break here after this one. But what a show lineup by our good buddy Bengal Jim. You see here he's got Ken Anderson, who just joined us, Chris Collinsworth, Anthony Munoz, Dave Lapham, Pete Johnson, Reggie Williams, Gary Burley, and Pat McAnally, all joining him on February 2nd, giving him some time from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern. So, we want to promote what some of these other great guys are doing, great guys and gals are doing out there. So Jim is a good guy and a friend of the program, a friend of Cincy Jungle. I've been on his show. He's been on ours, and we want to promote what he's doing there. So if you have the means, go check out. I think they're on YouTube and Facebook and all that stuff. So check that out. A lot of good old names there in Bengals history that he's being able to host. So fun stuff from Bengal Jim. I want to also point this out. This is another guy we've had on our show that we really, I've never been a big math guy. I was actually a history poli-sci guy in college, so I was not overly into math. So I always like to, on Twitter, look at Andre Parada, at Andre Parada 13, a good follow. He does a lot of cap stuff, salary cap figures, and you can see what he's got here. The Bengals have approximately $150.5 million in cap liabilities. Proposed $180 million cap. It's kind of fluid right now. It is going to drop. We all know that from previous years, but the Bengals will have roughly $40 million in space. And then, of course, they're going to roll over some. And then, after rolling over the $10 million, they'll probably roll over money again if they're able to do that. And then, they may shed some contracts off the books there. Geno Atkins, I don't know what they're going to be doing with Trey Waynes there. I assume they want to keep that contract as it is because they want to see what they can get out of him. But he's a high figure. You're getting AJ Green off the books, regardless of if he comes back or not. That franchise tag is not there. So just a little update from him, and we will get Andre back on the show coming up here in the next few weeks here, because obviously free agency becomes a frenzy. There's a lot to digest there, and he's a valuable guy, a really sharp guy. So we want to get him back on the program. Sage Ohio says I follow him on Twitter. Again, I'm Anthony Cosenza. We're going to be here for a few more minutes going over some headlines. Good to see all of you. Hello to, I see John Wallace from Scotland. Good to see you, man. Jason Von Stein, good friend of the program there, and a lot of others. Hello. Good to see you, whether you're joining us through our YouTube channel, Facebook, or if you're joining us on our Twitter account. We appreciate you joining us. I see West Texas here. Good to see you from Twitter there. So appreciate you all tuning in. We're trying to catch you up on all of the news with the Cincinnati Bengals within their division and around the NFL, as the Super Bowl is just around the corner. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com and the Orange and Black Insider. Appreciate you all tuning in. Or if you're listening after the fact, you're cool in my books too. If you're listening after the fact, but try and join us live. We like to interact with all of you. We're going to transition into the AFC North. Some unfortunate news with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Patricia Rooney passed away. I believe it was yesterday. And, obviously she and the Rooney family are big figureheads in the NFL landscape. So condolences to the Rooney family, and, something that's never easy to talk about, never easy to go through when you lose a loved one. So, we feel for the Rooney family and extend our condolences there. That's a sad thing. And by the way, if you look to the right here, another little sidebar, the actor Dustin Diamond, who played Screech in Saved by the Bell, he passed away at 44 from lung cancer today as well. That was kind of a sad and shocking thing too, for those of you who grew up in the 90s watching Saved by the Bell. Unfortunate news there. He's pretty young, obviously. So some somber news right there for you. Let's transition to I guess more football-ish news, and not such sad, somber news. This is so there's a lot to hash out between Ben Roethlisberger and the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got a big cap figure. The Steelers are kind of up against it in terms of a lack of cap space. So, they got to figure something out. Ben says he doesn't care about his pay at all this year, basically. And then, a couple days later, I think the Rooney family kind of said, well, we got to sit down and figure something out. Basically, Ben is willing to, it sounds like Ben Roethlisberger is willing to tweak his contract to be able to stick with the Steelers and maybe give it one last run. I mean, this was a really, really weird year for the Steelers. They started off 11-0. As you know, the Bengals knocked them off, and then they kind of went on a skid there at the end. I think they lost 5 of their last 6 games, including the postseason, and that postseason loss to the Browns was embarrassing on their home turf. A lot of mistakes, and really just could not stop the run, could not contain what Cleveland was doing, and Cleveland just kind of kept coming. And so I don't think they expected that. But regardless, it sounds, and this is on The Athletic again, by the way, but he wants to return for his 18th season, wants to come back to Pittsburgh. And so, I don't care about my pay at all this year, was the quote that Roethlisberger gave Ed Bouchette from The Athletic. So you can see here the veteran quarterback's current contract, $41 million is the cap hit, including $19 million in bonus money. But Roethlisberger has made it clear to Pittsburgh he wants to do everything he can to help the team. I'm pretty sure I want to go one more year because I think I can do it and gives us a real chance of winning, was another quote from Roethlisberger. There is a lot of stuff in there about, a little drama queen or prima donna or whatever, because he does the retirement game a little bit. He's done that in the past. I don't know if I'm going to play. And obviously, he kind of at times seems to milk some injuries, but I mean, no one can deny that Ben Roethlisberger is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's been extremely valuable to that franchise. So he wants to try and give it one more shot, maybe try and do it. But this is going to be a very interesting, we'll talk more about this. This is going to be a very interesting year in terms of the baton passing of quarterbacks around the league. We saw Drew Brees hang it up after his loss in the playoffs. We think he's probably going to retire. I think a lot of people think that. We're talking about Ben Roethlisberger potentially, maybe retiring, but it sounds like he's going to come back. Phillip Rivers retired after one season with the Colts, a pretty good season with the Colts, but retired. And then, of course, you've got some other movement of quarterbacks, other rumors of quarterbacks. So we'll talk more about that in a second. But going to be a different landscape. Who knows what happens with Tom Brady after this weekend? If he wins, is he done? If he doesn't win, is he done? I don't know. So, it's going to be a different looking landscape in terms of quarterbacks going forward after this year. A lot of big names potentially being moved or maybe calling it quits. Moving to the Baltimore Ravens side of things, this was just a kind of cryptic but an interesting tweet put out by Orlando Brown, who plays right tackle for the Baltimore Ravens. And he says, I'm a left tackle with all caps. They got Ronnie Stanley, who is their left tackle. And he's a guy that, thinks that he should be paid as and play left tackle. So I don't know if this was a ploy for him to potentially get moved and get traded out of town. Who knows? But it's certainly an interesting way to go about it. Going to social media and making that proclamation. So, I don't expect the Bengals. I don't expect the Ravens to try and lessen their roster by trading him away to the Bengals, if trade is even in the books there. So yeah, and I see, Tev, I'll just say Tev on Twitter says we should have drafted him when we had the chance. Yeah, if you remember, there was some talk because Marvin Lewis knew Orlando Brown Sr., who unfortunately passed away, but he knew Orlando Brown Sr. from, days in Baltimore, and he grew pretty close to the son. And, it was kind of a weird, drop from Orlando Brown in terms of his draft stock. A lot of people thought he was going to be potentially a round one pick, a guy that the Bengals could have grabbed, but some weight issues and, people kind of did paralysis by overanalysis a little bit, as they tend to do with some of these college prospects. And he ended up falling. The Ravens get him, and he's been a solid right tackle for them, but he wants to play left tackle and he wants to get paid as a left tackle. So we'll keep that monitored for sure. The Ravens usually have a pretty good offensive line, and he is a part of it. So something to monitor, as I said. We also have on NFL.com a Bucky Brooks first edition mock draft. Daniel Jeremiah had his come out a few days ago, and he had the Bengals taking Rashawn Slater at number 5, which was kind of surprising to some because they had, Penei Sewell was still on the board at the time, and he had Penei Sewell dropping all the way to 10 to the Cowboys. Jeremiah did. Now, here we are with Brooks. A lot of similarities. You're going to see a lot of the Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields talk at 1-2. Miami Dolphins grabbed JaMarr Chase at number 3 in his mock, and then Zach Wilson, the third quarterback in 4 picks in Bucky Brooks's mock. And here we go. The Cincinnati Bengals, they take Penei Sewell in Brooks' mock draft, first go around in the mock draft. The Bengals 2021 offseason is all about protecting and supporting Joe Burrow, says Bucky Brooks. Sewell is a dominant edge blocker with the ability to snuff out pass rushers in protection. So you can go on NFL.com and find the rest of that there, but he does have the Bengals taking Penei Sewell at number 5 in his mock draft. and JaMarr Chase going before at number 3 to the Dolphins. So that's pretty interesting. Speaking of the Miami Dolphins, let's transition here to one of the other big quarterbacks that was drafted last year with Joe Burrow and with Justin Herbert. Tua Tagovailoa calls his rookie season with the Dolphins, quote, below average. And you saw at the end of the season, he got benched for a little bit there after taking over for Ryan Fitzpatrick. So we'll see what happens here going forward. There's been some trade talk in terms of what is going on with Deshaun Watson, and maybe Tua is traded there. By the way, gotta love these ad videos that pop up on these things. Good Lord. At any rate, you can see here, I would describe my rookie season as below average. He told Adam Shine on Mad Dog Sports Radio this past season wasn't up to my expectation that I have for myself, but there were a lot of things I was able to learn from being able to look at the defenses and how different all of the schemes are with defensive coordinators. Everyone runs different things. Hopefully I can compartmentalize everything and have a much better season next year. So there's that. I think you look at that and there were some concerns already with Tua, his arm, and some other things. Obviously, you always have that question with Alabama players in terms of all the supporting cast that they have. But I think, based on, I know we are all very disappointed and saddened how Joe Burrow's season unfortunately ended. But I think, the fact that there's excitement going forward about Joe Burrow and what he can prove, even coming off of an injury, what he showed in limited games this year, I think the excitement is there from the Bengals fan base standpoint. Whereas Tua and the Dolphins, you were starting to get, I think Miami fans were starting to get pretty excited about what they were seeing from him at one point, and then it just kind of became a little bit of a game manager type of status, and then he was ultimately benched. So that's kind of where they're at now, and I don't know if Miami's going to try and already offload him. They had Josh Rosen at one point, and that didn't work out. So they may be trigger happy to try and get Deshaun Watson. I don't know. Russ, already you're teeing me up, buddy. Thoughts on Rams acquiring Stafford, payday heavy price? So let's talk about that one a little bit. Jared Goff, and now I did receive, I think it was on Twitter, so I don't know if I answered it, but there was basically a comment saying, how can you get a trade in place here with the new league year not started yet, I guess, was kind of the question that I saw. And the answer to that is you can basically agree to the terms, but the trade can't be executed until the league year starts. So they have this trade in place, and barring something, whatever, it's going to go through. But this is what's happening. The Rams are shipping Jared Goff and 2 first-round picks to acquire Matthew Stafford. 2 first-round picks and a third-round pick, to get Matthew Stafford. And Stafford was a guy who just didn't want to be with Detroit anymore. He kind of wanted to move on and try and see if he can get a championship somewhere. And he thinks that LA and Sean McVay is the place to do it. At the end of the season, McVay and Goff, they were at odds. I think McVay believed that the quarterback position was just not doing enough, and Goff was not doing enough to help the team. But I think also Goff had his feathers ruffled because there was kind of a non-committal statement from I think it was Les Snead and McVay at the end of the season, after McVay rushed himself back to play in the playoffs. He hurt his thumb, had to have a quick surgery, played in the playoffs, and didn't play overly well, obviously, given the throwing thumb injury. But that's that's kind of what ignited this whole thing. And then Stafford just doesn't want to go through another reboot in Detroit. So they're swapping quarterbacks along with picks. Now, the reason why, aside from maybe a talent disparity, the reason why the Rams sent such high draft capital, you see it right here. There is a 4-year, $134 million contract extension in place. And I believe there are 2 years left on that deal for Jared Goff. Now, there a lot of people are saying, the Rams got fleeced, or, the Detroit, you gave up your franchise quarterback. To me, as someone had asked kind of what I feel about it, I kind of look at it as, sometimes it's one of those things that maybe on paper, the capital that's been given up doesn't really match certain values and whatnot, but it's kind of two teams that were in a bad, not a great situation with their respective quarterbacks. Contract and underperforming for the Rams and Goff. Lions, Stafford didn't want to go through another rebuild. He just basically is like, send me somewhere. I don't want to be here anymore. So it's kind of like, well, what can we get and what can we give away to just kind of make these situations remedy themselves? So I kind of look at it as kind of a win-win for both teams. You could probably persuade me, quite honestly, to say, the Rams gave up way too much for Stafford. You could also say, why would the Lions pick up a quarterback like Goff in that terrible contract? You could also make the argument that those first-round picks may not be high first-round picks because the Rams are usually pretty competitive and have been under Sean McVay. So, there's a lot to kind of unfold here, but just kind of macro big picture on the thing. These were two teams that were not in good places with their respective quarterbacks that they had on their team. And it's kind of like, well, let's just get a deal going. And even if you have to, bite the bullet a little bit on some of the, the terms of the deals, you get out of a bad contract if you're the Rams and you're giving up a lot of draft capital, which you don't like to do, but you get out of it. And then, if you're the Lions, you're getting rid of your franchise quarterback who has basically expressed that he does not want to be there anymore. So it's just kind of getting you out of bad situations, even if it's taking on things that are less than ideal. So I kind of see it as a win-win for both teams, really. Now, Detroit I'm very interested to see how Goff performs away from McVay, because a lot of people think that McVay was the reason for any kind of success that Goff had. So I'm very interested to see how Goff performs away from, kind of like the Brady Belichick thing, right? I am very interested to see how Goff performs away from Detroit. And a couple of years from now, the Lions and their mindset may be, we may need a quarterback in a couple of years if Goff doesn't work out or we can't re-sign him or whatever. So let's take those picks that we're getting and, potentially have a package that's appealing to move up to get a top-end quarterback in a couple of years. Maybe that's the mindset. I don't know. But that's someone asked my opinions on that, as well as relaying the headlines of that news. I see Martin Carr saying, is Ross a free agent? John Ross, yes, he is a free agent. Martin Carr, John Ross is a free agent along with AJ Green, Mike Thomas, and Alex Erickson at the wide receiver position. So they have a lot to assess, the Bengals do, at that position group. I said that a little earlier in the show. So a lot to assess here. Well, I mentioned the Brady Belichick dynamic, and this was a quote that popped up that this week that was interesting to say the least. Danny Amendola played with the Patriots, played with Tom Brady, played under Bill Belichick. Tom Brady is the, quote, Patriot way, not the Patriots coaches. So you look at this here, and when you see, here's the quote here. When you see Patriot way in the dictionary, it's going to have Tom Brady's name next to it. None of those coaches threw any passes. None of those coaches caught any passes. None of those coaches made any tackles. They get guys in the right position because they watch a lot of film and they spend all their time at the facility. Tom Brady is the, quote, Patriot way, and that's the reason why Tom Brady's in the Super Bowl right now and the Patriots aren't. So, I guess you could kind of say, well, thanks, Captain Obvious. I appreciate that. But it is quite interesting to see a former teammate kind of say, it's not both. It's not, it's not all Belichick. It's the quarterback. So that's an interesting dynamic. I think we all can kind of at least sort of believe that based on the fact that Brady's in the Super Bowl away from the Patriots and Belichick. The Patriots did not even make the playoffs, much less the Super Bowl this year. They were not very good this year. I do think there are some embedded excuses a little bit for New England. They had a lot of players opt out because of COVID, a lot of important players, but nevertheless, Tom Brady's resume speaks for itself, and that's very, very telling words by Danny Amendola, who played under Belichick and with Tom Brady. We're going to get out of here in just a few more minutes. We've got a couple more headlines to get to. Quickly, one by Matt LaFleur. There is no doubt Aaron Rodgers will be the Packers quarterback in 21. I think I took the air a couple weeks ago saying, or maybe it was last week actually, there's no doubt that Aaron Rodgers himself was doubting being back with the Packers, but LaFleur, head coach of the Packers, says no way. Is that a trick question? Absolutely, LaFleur said. There is no doubt about it. You're talking about the guy that's going to win the MVP of the league. We're not in this position without him. So I couldn't be happier with not only his performance, but how he led this football team, all the little things he does within that locker room to ensure that everybody is locked in, focused, ready to go. So yeah, absolutely. He will be here for a long time. I know I've said that before, but for a long time. And then the GM, Brian Gutekunst, I guess. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Also added that he can't foresee any scenario he would consider trading Rodgers this year. Absolutely not. So that's at least one. We talked about some veteran quarterbacks either retiring or leaving their respective teams or what have you. And this is one that was kind of maybe a little bit up in the air for some people, and now it appears it is not. So that is the latest with the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers as we sit here on February 1st. Speaking of more quarterback questions, there is an issue at that position in Philadelphia. And you can see here Sirianni, quote, evaluating Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts. Competition is the core value for the Eagles. That was an interesting press conference, by the way, from Nick Sirianni, the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Kind of stumbled over his words a little bit in terms of, he had this prepared statement and talking about what his plan is, all that kind of stuff. And that just came out messy to say the least. Hey, I've been there. I've stumbled over my words a couple of times doing live talks with you guys. I know how that goes, but just wasn't a great look. Wasn't a great look, I guess, for a first impression. But yeah, basically he just said they're evaluating both guys. Carson Wentz, he got benched. He's kind of hasn't been the same guy after his first couple of years where he was putting up a lot of stats and wins and all kinds of stuff. But if you remember, he got hurt at the end of their Super Bowl run where Doug Peterson and Nick Foles led the team to a Super Bowl win, not Carson Wentz. And then they draft Jalen Hurts to the surprise of quite a few people in the second round last year. Hurts got some starts, had some good games, had some not so good moments, still a lot there. So they're going to try and figure out what they've got going here. A core value is competition, Sirianni said. That's competition everywhere. Everybody's going to compete. I'm going to compete with the offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, on things. We are going to compete in the building with coaches. Competition is the core value that we are going to use for every single position that we have here with the Philadelphia Eagles. So a little bit of coach speak there, and that's very Pete Carroll-ish. The competition, compete. He likes to promote that as well. So that is the skinny in Philly. Let's end it here with the injury report and just kind of some news about the Buccaneers and the Buccaneers and the Chiefs here going into just the Super Bowl on Sunday. Let's pull this up. This is also from NFL.com. Wide receiver Antonio Brown and safety Antoine Winfield getting close to returning So you see here, there's an injured knee with Antonio Brown, so he's, quote, getting close. Antoine Winfield, who had a nice little rookie season, is also getting close with an ankle injury. And then there's, it says, with Levante David, you'd have to shoot him to keep him out of this game, Arian said about Levante David, hamstring issue, not playing in this game. So here's a couple of other things. L'Jarius Sneed is cleared concussion protocol via Andy Reid. So the defensive back and Sammy Watkins should be cleared to he did not practice Friday, but Sammy Watkins is on their injury report. And then you see kind of some other names there too. But I think that the Chiefs also put a couple of players on the COVID list as well this week. So that's something to monitor too as you go into this week. But should be a very fun Super Bowl. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, weapons everywhere, a lot of offense. And one thing that, I think Tampa Bay has allowed quite a few points in certain points this season and in certain games against differing opponents. But one thing they do is they get after the quarterback a lot, whether that's Shaq Barrett, who we talked about earlier in the show, Devin White from the linebacker position. He has gotten a lot of quarterback sacks as well. So, you've got Sue on that team that can disrupt, and you've got a lot of different pieces there. So, while the Chiefs will and should put up points and yards and all that stuff against the Buccaneers, I think that, they can get after the quarterback. So it's kind of feast or famine a little bit on defense for them, but should be an interesting game, a fun game to watch. And hopefully you guys have some fun watching it. Be safe. And I don't know if you got a dog in the fight between those two teams. I don't really personally, I don't have a dog in the fight, but I just want to see a good game. And there's been quite a few of them recently, good ones. Really, the last bad one I can remember was the Seattle-Denver game a few years ago, probably like 4 or 5 years ago. That one was just brutal. But, for the most part, they've been pretty competitive since. So hopefully this one is a good one, and that you all enjoy the show that's going to be put on by the NFL. They do quite the production for the Super Bowl. So enjoy that. Enjoy the game. Thanks for tuning in on the Monday Water Cooler Chat, February edition. And we will see you Wednesday for our deep dive analysis show, John Sheeran and myself. You can keep it to Ace and Zim on New Stripe City and Orange is the New Black, their podcast there. That's part of the Cincy Jungle channel. You can also catch Matt Minnick's interviews and videos that he puts up on our channels here. Good stuff from him. We may also do a super show, a combination. We're talking about doing that with all the gang here going forward, and talking a little football with everybody on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel for a super show. So we'll let you know about that too. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate all of the support, and hopefully you go check out our interview with Ken Anderson. Go support the Ken Anderson Alliance as well. We appreciated the massive amount of time he gave us last week. It was awesome to talk to him again. Have a good rest of the week, guys. We'll see you soon.